In a previous real-side experience I shared, I made mention of the Universal Unuversities that are in operation now on the real side by special guide invite only, operating then in a position where unless you are permitted to access them and are agreeable also to do so, nowhere in creation throughout the multi-dimensional levels of the simulators will you find them. Also, on the previous real-side experience, would I reveal the presence of a grand sky city, where like the universities, where individuals continue to receive a real education, sharings and references that pertain to the ears, so it would be the same situation, and like the universities, where the Guides, Duane, and other trusted and aware beings are presenting as though real education lessons. Again, this was similarly the case with the Sky City, and I would encounter Duane and Val there, along with another real guide. This real-side experience would begin with another similar view. Not so much places of real education and reference providing and sharing, although I'm sure this would be a feature of it also, but more so as a vast, and what my impressions revealed, real-side multi-dimensional community of a kind, what we might call a real-side self-sufficient community, open to all beings and body types of a sincere and stepping up nature, and I would have as though a brief tour of the overall layout. Vast and multi-dimensional, as I said, but the real awareness instigating the tour and moving things along at a pace slow enough to get a good oversight of the entirety of the community for the personal self, but not so ponderous that too much so-called time would be required for it. For to traverse it completely, were we to apply the limitations of, say, human consciousness ideas of distance and time into the equation, I'm certain you would require several human lifetimes to fully explore the community. But as everything is, in reality, every idea that effects into a simulation contained in the endless nowness of the true reality, the real awareness that we all are, that is a part of this isness, can be somewhat selective as to what it shows to the personal self, can move swiftly its created simulated self to the relevant points in the experience, or extract and reinsert it in and out of certain simulated positions, as though fast-forwarding a movie or skipping to the best scenes, etc. As I was shown all this, the multi-dimensional nature of it was made clear, represented by the community being layered, like a series of levels stacked upon each other, and a distance of what visually appeared thousands of feet between each layer or level, the levels which were the varying dimensions of it, with its respective array of beings and body types on each. The individuals on each level perhaps resigned to certain areas, certain dimensions, perhaps not, dependent on their awareness and the extent to which they have unshackled themselves from idea agreements of the consciousness which present as limitation, that limits what of the entirety of creation we can access. We are everything already and everywhere. We are this isness, real awareness, but our focus, attachments, agreements, decisions and intent dictate what of the everything we are we actually stand as. But as I investigated the various levels, as I somewhat started at the top and descended, I would literally drop as though free falling to the level below, which was very exhilarating for the personal self. And on every level the personal self was shown, so it was that Duane was featuring, and I and his many created vehicle versions that his awareness operated through would exchange greetings, for he has the recognition of the ears, and he is at liberty to access any part of the creational simulated realms. Like I said, he, like all of us, will be there and everywhere already, but if our awareness is somewhat locked to limited areas, it's as though our other dimensional versions of the created self just go about their business automatically. Their actions and activities, based on how we motivate them through our thoughts, emotions, imagination, etc., but we may not necessarily experience through these vehicles consequently and consciously, whereas Duane is fully conscious and aware throughout all his created vehicles multi-dimensionally, as this experience clearly revealed and verified to me. And so, my brief tour of this real side multi-dimensional community would conclude, a promising and inspiring thing to behold, as this verified how extensively beings the length and breadth of creation are stepping up, deciding to become more aware, and being a part of these type of communities, including the Unuversities, the sky cities, etc. For you don't construct something on such a vast multi-dimensional level unless you anticipate an equally vast volume of individuals to be agreeable to it and participate, and indeed this was the case. I'm almost certain that it's reaching a point where more individuals are at least aware of Duane and the guides than not throughout creation, and I might suggest a far greater proportion of all the beings in this simulator than we might realize are indeed stepping up, singing the NUUU sound, and getting actively involved to provide a benefit, awareness, and life speaking in some form or another, and this view was another indication of just this. In the next scene, I would find myself with a large number of individuals, all stepping up, and those deciding to become more aware and ultimately recognize the ears, etc. And as we set our intent with the ears, so all simulation, real side experience, reflects that intent. We have what we might term awareness bolstering experiences, and the opportunity to present the ears to others by being deployed to various creational positions to meet endless varieties of body type and beings, and so forth. The large number of individuals present were predominantly human. There were a scattering of other body forms also. I noticed a number of reptilians, as they were rather conspicuous with their green scaled skins, tails, and dinosaur-like lizard faces. These were reptilians also deciding to recognize the ears, or they would not be present with this group. As you can't share experience with another unless your idea agreements align. In this case, the shared idea of the intent of recognizing the ears, effecting shared simulated experience for the continued facilitation of such. Among the group of predominantly humanoids and reptilians was a robotic body form also. He would be the only one of his kind, a very sophisticated design that had him look almost passable as a human, but he wasn't hiding the fact. He was as welcomed among the group as any other, simply another body form for awareness to experience simulation through, just like the reptilian or human forms. The body vehicles are immaterial, really. It's how you utilize them that counts, for providing a benefit for all life, or to be abrasive, controlling, and evil. It's always a choice. The opening scene here was as though a preparation area. The sense was that all present, me included, had been appraised of what we were to be involved with. But for my personal self, as the view had opened up at a stage when this had already completed, so I was somewhat in the dark as to what was going on, at least for the moment, but visually it seemed we were set to embark on a journey of a kind. There was a curious, large, four-legged dog that moved among us, and now and again would select a certain individual. Both would fade from the scene and return moments later. To those not taken, mere moments had elapsed. For the returning individual, as we spoke with them, it had seemed like hours. What was occurring was this. The dog was relocating the individuals to another position, and making as though alterations to their consciousness, with the individual's agreement naturally, beneficial alterations that would be along the lines of shifting attachments, removing outdated agreement ideas, which then would better have the personal self aligned more so with the real intent of overall ears recognition, as though for some of the group a little readjustment was required at this moment. But were the individual not agreeable, if they chose to cling to whatever this dog being was assisting them in the releasing of, so they could not proceed any further, at this point at least, with the group, until, say, they made the necessary adjustments, perhaps attitudes, etc., but no one of the group would be resistant, and so those that required this dog's assistance would receive it, and be primed to depart with the rest of us. This dog, then, was a very aware being, as impressions revealed, with the capability to make these consciousness adjustments in others. Very aware, yes, though he was not a guide, and choosing to operate in this four-legged dog form for whatever reason. One individual charged with orchestrating at least this stage of the operation declared it was a time to depart, a no-nonsense, burly-looking human man, but an individual with much by way of awareness also, as impressions suggested. We departed the preparation area and found ourselves walking along a beach. It would be night time, the sky was star-littered, and then suddenly what emerged from the sand were vast sea-faring vessels, but ones of a very ancient and antiquated design. They looked like Viking ships, or something along similar lines, and as it transpired, we were to board these very vessels. We would do so, and take our seats upon them. There certainly were many individuals, and just enough room on the ships to accommodate all of us. And then the beach would begin to disappear beneath an incoming tide. As it appeared, the sea here would continuously rise from this point to the extent that the ships begin to float upon the waters, then drift out to sea. What emerged from the water now and boarded each vessel were what I may describe as fish men. The closest approximation would be beings that looked like the mermaid creature in the movie The Shape of Water, but just like that creature, they didn't have fish tails. They were bipedal, two-legged, humanoid then in appearance, but with webbing along the forearms, lower legs, webbing of the fingers and toes. I wouldn't say fish-like heads, more human, but with a slight protruding snout and an array of fin-like appendages attached to it, their bodies covered in scales that shone a delightful blue-green colour. Personally, I thought it to be a very resplendent in design, body form. These fish beings were charged with escorting us to our destination, and indeed with their developed psychic science abilities, so they had manifested these ancient earth-like vessels for the journey, emerging them, as I said, from the very sand. They would reveal that the large group and myself were to be taken to their world, which lay beneath the ocean. Although it wasn't stated, impressions suggested a rather hollow planet-type situation, and this is where these beings hailed from, though occasionally would emerge to the outer world if they had reason to do so, such as this situation, which suggested this scene was possibly based on the planet Earth, though I can't be certain this was so, as there really were no indications to verify it as the Earth. They had simply utilized ancient Earth-based vessels, etc., conjuring them out of the very ethos. And now, the means of accessing the hollow world, the world beneath the surface, was revealed. The vessels had drifted way out into the ocean, and now the waters would churn as though disturbed by a mighty force. The water spiraling and forming a sinkhole, a watery funnel that descended downward and terminated in the realm of the fish people beneath the surface layer. This was a rather unnerving means of access, as the ships would be travelling practically vertically downward and around the spiralling water funnel entrance. But our safety was assured. Maybe not for any vessel that attempted such, but these were ones created by the fish beings, and they would use their powers to assure our journey was without incident, suggesting you couldn't readily enter their hollow planet world via the sea, absent of the fish people's assistance. One reptilian aboard became very nervous, and rather irritated another being that was sat beside him. I say sat, more coiled, as this other individual had the appearance of a naga or lamia, or say, as the Medusa is depicted in Greek mythology, or the vipers in the computer game XCOM, boasting a snake body to the waist, then a humanoid torso, arms, and a head, though the humanoid features were very reptilian also, scaled, and a head that resembled that of a cobra. The irritated snake being would lunge at the reptilian and constrict him in his extensively long-coiled snake-like body, and so one of the fish people would have to calm the situation and separate the two. Individuals on their ears recognizing journeys, yes, but not devoid of their personal selves, and so it's understandable for a little drama and attitude. Nevertheless, with everyone now settled, so the vessels would begin their downward descent through the swirling water tunnel vortex entrance, as my view was now as though from a distance, no longer from the perspective of my simulated self on board one of the vessels, but affording a better camera angle, you might say, of the descending ships. The real awareness certainly has a knack for capturing the scenes of the experiences from the best possible and most impacting positions. The experience would end there, alas, before I had the view of what awaited us in the world below, but evidently this was a necessary step for this large group and myself, an engaging with these fish beings. Perhaps they were preparing to step up also with Duane and the guides, or perhaps they already are, and we are to join them in some mutually life-beneficial endeavours and projects. This was never made apparent, but all were agreeable and eager to meet with these beings, as the fish people had a consciousness developed that boasted extreme creational, manipulating, magical type capability. So from a creational body form perspective, such beings always will be a tremendous asset, and perhaps I will be shown more of our engaging with these beings at a later moment.
Wunderbar. Well, Kevin, that's really encouraging that more and more beings are becoming aware of what we're doing, what the real guides are doing, and coming on board. We may not see it here on the planet, but on the real side, you're showing us. Thank you for bringing that back and showing us that more and more beings are becoming more aware and contributing, or willing to contribute. Can I ask you what the Sky City community, what position was that? Was that in creation or in the real universes? Like, whereabouts was that positioned in your experience?
As I revealed in the experience, it was in creational simulation. In other words, you didn't need the recognition of the is to participate in it. It was one that was freely available for any being within this simulated realm, that potentially anybody could perceive it and indeed visit it. I assume it would be regulated to an extent, because I have shared experiences in which similar projects were set up, but they were sort of infiltrated, and there were a number of beings that actually attacked the cities, and they had to almost have as they were sort of a police presence to regulate the troublemakers. But with the Unuversities, as I've described in previous experiences and this one and made mention of in these two, they seem to be simulated, yes, but they're removed from the overall simulator arena, in which therefore not anybody can simply walk through the door. You have to have almost like a special invite provided to you by the real guides, almost like a special file sent to your consciousness you then agree with, install in your consciousness, which affects then the simulation of the universities in which you can enter and participate and experience. But the Sky City and the other one that I mentioned in this experience, which is like this huge multi-dimensional setup, was basically available and viewable to anybody in creation. But that would also be according to the individual, because obviously if someone has their focus and attention intent very much set one-dimensionally, they're obviously not going to experience it, because you'd have to be rather open multi-dimensionally to first view it and then experience it. Otherwise you probably wouldn't. But yeah, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's very neat. What's going on?